something like a carbon tax, so this is where you tax polluting activities, is really important because there's the old phrase, you've got to incentivize the good and disincentivize the bad. And the companies that are polluting, so let's take private jets, for instance, that is clearly awful. The problem that sometimes happens, though, is a carbon tax gets talked about as a way of generating revenue to go back into public services. And that's a little bit of a distracting myth because actually, for several reasons, but the main one is if you're taxing a polluting company, you want them to reduce the pollution. You don't want to earn more money for it because otherwise that's a way of saying the thing you're doing is really bad. But if you're rich enough and wealthy enough, you can keep doing it. We're just going to find you a little bit more. And so actually, we've got to find ways of disincentivizing bad behavior. And some of that will just be banning it, or some of it will be taxing it so hard that it's just no longer a viable business. Obviously, the flip side of that is to make sure we're giving tax breaks or tax cuts to those organizations that are doing the right thing. So whether that's around public transport, nationalising energy, nationalising water companies, it's outrageous right now that water companies are pumping sewage into our rivers and charging us extra for that privilege. None of that needs to be that way. None of that is natural. It's political choices, and we can make different political choices. Yeah, we need to be nationalising anything that shouldn't be a monopoly. So, energy, steel are the very obvious ones. I'm really struck by Zoran Mamdani's campaign in New York, where he's having publicly owned corner shops to be selling groceries on the street. I've been talking about this before Zoran was, not in a kind of competition way, but I just mean he's not the first person to come up with it. Definitely not going to compete with Zoran. Um, but I talked about this on the Jeremy Vine show recently, and a right-wing kind of talking head said, "Oh, so you want to nationalize Sainsbury's?" But it's not about taking private companies and nationalizing them. It's about recognizing that if people need essentials, then this shouldn't be driven by profit. It should be driven by people's needs. And again, I don't think there's anything contentious about that. I think it's been made contentious because of decades of neoliberal agendas of corporate companies who have bought politicians and bought the media, so support independent media, and pushing this narrative constantly, that in some way profit or competition is the best way to run a country, and it clearly isn't. Thames Water being the most obvious example, we sold it, as in we, the public, sold it, or government sold it with £0 debt. It's now in £70 billion of debt. Privatization is a failed experiment, and rather than pointing out nationalisation as kind of a new thing, of a thing, that we're going to go to, we're returning to it. We're returning, recognizing that the neoliberal agenda over the past couple of decades has utterly failed in this country. The status quo is devastating. We have more food banks in this country than McDonald's. I mean, if that is not like the epitome of a broken nation, just that one stat alone, I think, should cut through to how much we need to turn this country around. And we absolutely can do. And the really, really good thing about this is nationalisation is a really popular policy among the public. So the only reason it's not happening, and I literally mean the only reason, is politicians in the pockets of media, and that's kind of a two-way feedback loop, pretending it's too difficult, pretending it's too hard, pretending it's too expensive. They're lies, it's a misinformation, and we fully intend to cut through with the truth.